Hello, it's Diane Sayre, and welcome to the LaRouche Organization Symposium. This will be airing on Friday, August 8th, in between the 80th anniversary of the two nuclear bombs having been dropped on Hiroshima, August 6th, and Nagasaki on August 9th. We are recording this on Wednesday, the 6th. So if some breaking development has occurred that's not reflected in the comments of myself and my guest, former CIA analyst Larry Johnson, that's why. But I thought it was very important to have someone on who has worked in the intelligence domain because of what is now breaking. And it is my position that having now looked at Winston Churchill's Operation Unthinkable, the plans for war with Russia, he didn't even use the term Soviet Union in his document, Operation Unthinkable. He said war with Russia. He proposed hostilities begin on July 1st, 1945, before the victory in Japan. Before that, the Pacific Theater had even ended. He was already recruiting Nazis and Poles and everyone else to join this effort. And once they saw the nuclear bombs dropped, he was hoping that there could be a nuclear preemptive strike on Russia. So it is my hypothesis that the drive for war with Russia began before Franklin Roosevelt's body was even cold. He died April 12th, 1945, VE Day. Victory in Europe Day was May 8th. And we have been on that trajectory since, with various presidents resisting, like Kennedy, Reagan in a different way, Clinton to some degree, who then got set up in a kind of operation. And then Trump was seen, especially in his first term, as a terrible threat to the trajectory for war with Russia. And I think that is what this Russiagate operation actually is about. But I'm going to bring on Larry Johnson. Hi, Larry. Welcome.
Hey, Diane.
And I think what's happened with what Tulsi Gabbard has done is really a very, very big deal. I do have some slides of some of the documents she's released, which we can go to, but I'd like perhaps your comments and a sort of overview on why this is so significant at this time.
Well, I've known about this and been active in trying to highlight it for 8 years. I was the one who went to Devin Nunes around March 9th, 2017. This was a couple of days after the Trump had come out and said that the FBI had wiretapped him, and he didn't understand. It wasn't the FBI that was wiretapping him. It started overseas with the British through GCHQ, who were intercepting the communications of Trump and all of the people on his campaign, and that information was then passed to NSA, and NSA then distributed it through CIA. So there was a way, because NSA and CIA are prohibited from doing that kind of collection. Doesn't mean that they don't do it, but I'm just saying it is illegal for them to do it. However, it's not illegal for the Brits to do it and then pass it to us. And when I went in and told Devin this, he was like, "Oh, I had to explain it to him." He was the new head of the House Intelligence Committee at the time, but he didn't understand how GCHQ and NSA worked, and how that whole collection operation had been in place for a while. That then led him to go to the White House to receive a briefing and to see some documents. And then when he came out, that's when he started the investigation. And we've just recently had a release of some of the papers, of the results of that, his report, or the report that Kash Patel wrote up. So what Tulsi's releasing right now, it's sort of there's some good news in it. And it shows that the director of analysis So at the top of the CIA, you have the Director of Central Intelligence. Then they have, at least when I was there were 4 directorates. I think there are 5 now. One directorate deals with analysis. One directorate deals with operations overseas. One directorate was science and technology. And a 4th was admin. So this was someone who was like number 2 level at the CIA. Protested and disagreed with John Brennan, trying to put a twist on some of the reports. And
now, is that person known, or is that the whistleblower that Tulsi Gabbard has now interviewed?
Yeah, it's a whistleblower. The person, to my knowledge, has not been identified by name.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any. Normally, someone in the Directorate of Analysis is not undercover. Now, I was undercover when I went in because I was in the career trainee program, and I had classmates that were in the Directorate of Operations, such as Valerie Plame. Mention her. I can mention her name because
she was outed.
Yeah, she is outed, quite a bit.
Right.
Good Lord, and that was 20 years ago.
By the Bush people. I mean, by this crowd, frankly, these people like Mark Warner, who's now saying Tulsi Gabbard should be fired. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is supposedly the threat to national security, not the traitors. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. Listen, I applaud Tulsi for what she's doing, because a lot of us were skeptical that she was going to follow through, but she went forward. And I've a friend of mine who's actually had some meetings with her lately. He said she was really swimming against the tide in the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. So the Trump folks weren't eager. A lot of the Trump folks weren't eager to get this out either. But she's now she's ripped the scab off and exposed this infected wound on their body politic.
Right. Well, maybe that's a good place to just go to some of what she's released, because I think it's very big, and I think people haven't seen all of it. And she did a wonderful, all of the documentation is on the dni.gov website, but she also did this whole long posting on X, which maybe you saw. I couldn't fit the entire poster here, but I thought this was great. It's the little flow chart, right? Creation of the Russia hoax, real intel assessment that Russia is not interested and incapable of hacking the infrastructure. Donald Trump wins. The briefing to the president of the United States that said Russia wasn't doing it was pulled. And then there was a secret Russia meeting, and she has, we'll get to it, the national security doc. You probably know who a lot of the people are who were at the meeting more. Mm-hmm. I know many of them, but I don't know all of them, the significance. And then she just shows little clips of the documents where you see August 31st, Department of Homeland Security official to DNI Clapper. We are working with CIA on a president's daily brief submission on the threat. The thrust of the analysis is that there is no indication of a Russian threat, etc. Then September 9th, lead author of the president's daily brief. I took the intent of this email to get the basic starting point regarding Russia. We agree with Russia probably is not and will not trying to influence the election by using cyber means to manipulate computer-enabled election hardware. So very clear. Then December 7th, DNI Clapper, activity on and since Election Day. We assess, this is their own analysis. We assess that foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential election outcome of this year. Bullet point number 1, we have no evidence of cyber manipulation of election infrastructure intended to alter results. That's December 7th. Now, here is this crucial December 8th and 9th. So the December 8th president's daily brief says up here for the president, 8th of December, cyber manipulation. Russian and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting malicious cyber activities against election infrastructure. And that very same day, that brief is pulled, quote unquote, based on some new guidance. And it says, we are going to push back publication of the brief. It will not run tomorrow and is not likely to run until next week. And then here it is. So you will know some of these people, I'm sure, here. So this is the meeting, December 9th, 2016, White House Situation Room, 2 hours, 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Summary of conclusions for PC meeting on a sensitive topic. And this is where Obama supposedly gave the orders to come up with a new report. So we have Susan Rice, who's our ambassador to the UN, White House counsel Neil Eggleton, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. I can't read under the arrow, something Andrew McCabe.
FBI. He was number 2 at FBI.
Yeah, John Kerry. What does SVP mean?
Civets, that's secure video teleconference. So that just means that they were appearing on, like you and I are doing on Zoom. It's just secure.
So he was on by video. Victoria Nuland, you know who she is, Undersecretary of State for whatever the hell. John Brennan of the CIA, General Joseph Dunford, Richard Leggett at the NSA, Avril Haines, who I think had been stationed in London at some point. Is that right? Or am I mixing?
No, that was Gina Haspel.
Oh, Gina Haspel. Yes, you're right. Treasury, Adam Zubin, DOD, Brian McKeon, Loretta Lynch, Mary McCoy. This is quite a crew.
It's everybody. I mean, this is.
So what are your thoughts on this august gathering here?
Right there is the foundation for bringing conspiracy charge. You know, we always hear this, the people try to dismiss credible allegations as, quote, a conspiracy theory, trying to imply that it's made up or it's false. But this effort to pin Trump as an agent of Russia, it started in the summer of 2015. That's what people don't understand. And I'm not saying that I'm not some ardent Trump supporter. In fact, I'm one right now thinking that he ought to be removed from office personally. But what was done to him, this isn't about Trump. This is about the perversion of our system of government, of the election, and the abuse of the intelligence and law enforcement community. They carried out basically a coup, because in the summer of 2015, John Brennan had already set up an effort to collect. He was collecting intelligence on everybody who was running for president except for Hillary. He was doing this on behalf of Hillary.
Right. Now, I just want to stop you for a second, because you brought up the crucial British role, and you are probably aware that in 2015, the London Guardian bragged about what you just said at the beginning, which it was the GCHQ, which first, quote unquote, became aware of the Russian efforts to meddle and to hack and do all these other things. And the GCHQ were the ones who informed the US. I think this is very, very important. Go ahead.
That was the cover story, because what was really happening, they were collecting on Bernie Sanders. They collected on Ted Cruz. They collected on Marco Rubio. Because remember, in the summer of 2015, few people were predicting that Trump would actually succeed in winning the nomination. So this was an insurance policy for Hillary, and Brennan was playing along with it. Now, how do I know that? Well, one of my former colleagues at the agency, he called me up, and he had been the one that had helped me brief Devin Nunes way back in 2012. When Devin was first appointed to be on the House Intelligence Committee, he didn't know a thing about the CIA, about the intelligence community. My next door neighbor at the time in Bethesda, Maryland, was the largest defense lobbyist in DC. And he said, hey, would you mind going to meeting with Devin Nunes and explaining to him what's going on? So I took with him an individual who had been he'd been an admin chief in Beirut, in El Salvador. Was had seen a lot of action overseas, so he was well qualified. Anyway, he called me up and he said, "Hey, I just got a call from one of my one of his friends who said he'd been approached by John Brennan to work on what was they were calling it the Trump Task Force."
Wow.
And a task force means you bring together people from other agencies, FBI, NSA, DOD, to work on integrating and collecting all intelligence. So this started in the summer of 2015. In fact, that's how they found, remember George Papadopoulos, he appears in this whole narrative at some point. We got to step back and say, how did they find him? I mean, he was really a nobody. Well, what happened was he was in London. He reached out and had communications with Corey Lewandowski, who was the chief of staff, or he was, the head of the campaign for Donald Trump. Guess who intercepted that communication? GCHQ. And so out of that, then the MI6 and CIA began developing. They started working up a folder. Who is this George Papadopoulos? And they put together an entire plan to entrap him, to use him as a way to pin Russia on Trump. I mean, this is diabolical, but this was, the effort had started in 2015. In fact, if even the Mueller investigation, remember they highlighted one of the charges they were investigating was the Russian influence on Trump to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Well, that conversation, the entire thing was surfaced in September of 2015. And how do we know the FBI was involved? Because the individual who was identified by Mueller, a guy named Felix Sater, Felix had been born in Russia, grew up in the same borough of New York City, I think it was Brooklyn or Bronx, had a boyhood friend by the name of Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Well, Felix Sater was he got into trouble with the law, got into a bar fight, stabbed somebody with a wine glass. He was a Wall Street guy.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
That's typical behavior for them, I think, and worse, but go ahead.
But he gets signed up in 1999 as an FBI informant. And he's signed up by one Andrew Weissman. Weissman, who was the lead on the Mueller team. It turned out that Felix Sater also had ties to the CIA, because the CIA was using him trying to track down bin Laden's cell phone. And he was using contacts he had in Russia and then into the Uzbekistan and the republics just north of Afghanistan. So lo and behold, Felix Sater then transforms himself into this real estate guy, and he's working in the Trump Tower from like 2003 on. So he knows Trump. He's an FBI informant. So jump ahead then to September 2015. Oh, and he's the one that brought Michael Cohen into the Trump organization. So I'd say this, we ought to be singing the Walt Disney song, "It's a Small World After All."
Right.
But he jumps to 2015, and the one who comes in to pitch the Trump team on doing a Moscow Tower is Sater. It wasn't the Trump team's idea. It was Sater.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean,
so typical of the FBI. So typical. Oh, my goodness.
So they were trying to bait the trap from there. So, that's why I say what Tulsi's unveiling right now is what I call phase 3. Phase 1 was this thing that started in summer of 2015, continued up until May 1st of 2016. From May 1st on, it was phase 2, where it was totally focused on Trump, going after Carter Page, going after George Papadopoulos, going after Roger Stone, going after Paul Manafort, going after Michael Flynn. I mean, it wasn't just doing one. It was a broad-based effort. FBI was involved, CIA was involved, and then Trump wins. Kick off phase 3. That's what we're seeing here with these documents.
Right. Right. Now, I think Tulsi has also her own motivations for doing this, given that she's a veteran and she's very concerned about war, and she saw the effects of the lies about the weapons of mass destruction. While I certainly don't appreciate her, and I don't know why. I don't know her well enough to know why she's kissed the Zionist ring, if that's just ambition or whatever it is.
Right, right.
But obviously the video she did about Hiroshima, here we are filming on the day that Hiroshima was bombed 80 years ago. I think she's actually concerned about where these wars might lead, and
Yeah.
therefore is concerned to expose this, because as you said, it's not just Trump. These are the very individuals who have lied us into any number of military operations.
Well, in fact, yesterday with the Kremlin announcing that they were no longer going to abide by the restrictions that were under the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. The INF had been set up back in 1987. I guess that was signed by Reagan and Gorbachev.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at the time, in fact, I was talking with Scott Ritter about this yesterday. When I entered on duty at CIA in 1985, the big concern was about the deployment of Pershing II missiles. We were deploying, the United States was pushing these intermediate range nuclear missiles, excuse me, into Europe. And in part because some of the European governments were terrified of what they saw as the Soviet SS-20. And so Gorbachev and Trump, Reagan, excuse me, they reached an agreement to pull off and stop all research on ground-based intermediate-range ballistic missiles. Didn't prohibit research on air-launched or sea-launched, but it did take it off the ground. Well, that agreement held until 2018 when Donald Trump unilaterally pulled out of it. And the Russians have been doing research. They've got this thing called the Russiagate, but it was,
Right.
again, it was air launched. But now they pulled out, and they're saying, hey, we're back to where we were pre-1987, which means the nuclear tensions are heating up. And the reason they did that is the Russians made that announcement following on the heels of a number of alarming, let's call it threatening activities by the United States. You had this General Donahue, the head of European Command, talk about how quickly we could take over and invade Kaliningrad, an exclave of Russia. Then that was followed by, that same week, Trump's DOD allowed the redeployment of B-61-12 nuclear gravity bombs. Those, we had pulled out nuclear weapons from Europe in 2008. Now we've redeployed nuclear bombs into Europe, in Lakenfield in England and 6 other locations throughout Europe. And then Trump with his, claim, I've ordered 2 submarines, with nuclear strike capability to be prepared to launch on Russia. Now, so Russia's reacting to this by saying, okay, hey, no more INF. We've been abiding by, even though you pulled out of the INF, we continue to try to abide by it. We're not going to do that anymore. Everything, we're locked and loaded. And that is extremely alarming.
Yeah, I agree. I know Scott had brought up this question of the decapitation strike, which some particularly insane people think we can win. I mean, Israel did not succeed in a decapitation strike against Iran, which
Right.
they thought they were going to do. And I'm sure the United States was in the middle of that. So why any fool thinks that we could successfully do such a thing? And then they have the dead hand where the coding is such that if the Kremlin is struck, if Putin is killed, it all just launches, and that's the end. And I think people in the West are very drunk with their own arrogance. They really don't have a clue. And the Kaliningrad thing, I have to say that I have a very dear friend who was with me throughout the campaign. He's a almost 80-year-old Vietnam veteran Marine who was looking at the big Army 250th anniversary parade. And he was horrified by the condition of our troops.
Yeah.
He said they're overweight, they're not in shape, they can't march, they're completely undisciplined and he said, we're going to have a ground war? Who are you kidding? The Russians have been at war now for 3 years. They are trained, they have learned, the whole technique of warfare has evolved with drones I mean, it's a completely new animal.
Right.
The idea that we are going to send ground troops anywhere when we're up against that kind of a force, I mean, it just boggles the mind. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Oh, no. Your rant is well deserved. Is, you know, the fact of the matter is the United States has not won a war since the end of World War II, and we won. You know, we didn't really win the war in Europe. That was a Russian victory or a Soviet victory. We helped out. We played a role, but not the overwhelming important role. We did win the war in the Pacific. That was done. You know, we can take credit on that front. But now, you know, we keep ridiculing and the Russian army, ignoring our own failures, and you know, in Afghanistan. You know, right. We were there for 20 plus years, and we were fighting basically a guerrilla force and couldn't defeat them. Right. We had every military advantage a modern army could have: armor, artillery, fixed wing aircraft flying overhead, rotary wing aircraft, you know, the helicopters, and satellite intelligence. We had the most modern weaponry in the world. And we were fighting against guys who did not have any of those things. So all they had were rifles, RPGs, some mortars, and they beat us, or we could not defeat them. Right. And the same in Iraq.
And how about Yemen recently?
Yeah. No. Don't you know they capitulated?
Oh, is that what happened? I'm sorry. I guess I missed it.
Yeah. I wish, you know. I'd love to see Monty Python back, and you know, watching. You've got 3 Yemeni, you know, a general, a mullah, and a politician, and they're sitting there watching like the television, CNN, and they hear Trump says they capitulated, and they go, "Capitulate? Did you capitulate? I didn't capitulate. Did you capitulate?" Yeah. Because, you know, here, our Navy, we declare victory. Oh, we win. We're going home. And the facts of the matter, the Houthis, against all odds, beat the U.S. Navy. I mean, that's the bottom line. So that's where we need to wake up. And we're so enamored of this saber rattling. And, you know, our first... You know, like a 3-year-old child with a hammer. Our response is always military. We got to hit everything, and the concept of diplomacy, or even putting ourselves in the shoes of the other person to understand why are they doing what they're doing. Have we done anything to provoke this? Well, you know, damn right we've done nothing but provoke Russia. And I wrote a piece the other day. Reacting to an article in the American Conservative written by a Jewish refusenik, or he's the child of Jewish refuseniks. These were Jews who came out of the Soviet Union in the 1970s. And his article is about how, you know, Russia's a bunch of warmongers. They're perpetually at war. And he was writing, you know, in favor of Ukraine. Wow. And a friend of mine took exception. He goes, "Why are you attacking the Jews?" And I said, No, let me explain. I was clumsy in my wording. I said, I have a problem with Jews, modern day Jews, who embrace the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainian government is founded on Nazi principles. They are neo-Nazis. Jews who endured the Holocaust in World War II are now embracing the ideological errors of the Nazis that were exterminating them in World War II.
Right.
So I said, I view this guy that wrote this article in the same way that I view Chaim Rumkowski. Rumkowski was the Jewish leader in charge of the Lodz ghetto, and he was responsible for sending tens of thousands of Jews to Auschwitz. Yeah, the irony was ultimately, he thought his collaborating with the Nazis was going to save him.
Right.
And the ultimate irony was he got packed on the train, and when he got there, the Jewish Soder commandos beat him to death for what he had done. So, wow. But what I'm pointing out here is we've got this narrative where we're supposed to ignore the Nazi heritage that's right there, and in Ukraine. And yet, at the same time, if you try to raise it on some social media, boy, you get banned.
Right.
And so that this gets back to the broader the whole corruption of the intelligence community, where it doesn't matter whether it's Ukraine or whether it's Gaza, they feed lies into the machine to help shape a narrative so that the average American or average person around the world, they're hearing one story and they go, oh yeah, that's what it is. And when it's the exact opposite.
Exactly. So on this narrative question, I do want to bring up this crazy caveman who doesn't know how to fix his hair. Boris Johnson here, who is speaking in Taiwan, and I apologize for the audio. But what he's saying at this meeting is that and after making all these bellicose threats against China, of course, because that's why he's there, but then he shifts over to Russia. He says Putin has no idea. He's lost. He's going to lose. He's not going to be seen as the great unifier of Europe or whatever. And then he said, and now it appears that finally the scales have fallen from the Trump White House, the eyes of the Trump White House, I guess, implying that the Trump administration is a bunch of reptiles. And that now Trump realizes you can't be chummy with Putin, that Ukraine is going to win, Putin's going to lose, and that China and India, and he's very gleeful about it's in 2 days, isn't it? Yes, it's 2 days, and China and India are going to feel the effect of their support in buying the hydrocarbons from Russia. It is stunning. And of course, this is the guy who went to Ukraine when it was only, 3 or 4 weeks into the war in 2022. Yeah. The thing would have been over. And he got over there very quickly and told the Ukrainians not to sign and keep fighting. And here he is again. And by the way, he was on Fox News as well, which really makes me think of this. Do you remember the British ambassador who had to leave, Sir Kim Darroch, in Trump's first term? What happened was these cables got leaked. They were trying to figure out how to press Trump to invade Iran. And he said, well, Trump has a big ego, and what you have to do is flood the zone, praise him, flatter him, and then find out everyone whom he's speaking with and invite them to brunches and teas and surround him with a certain narrative. And Trump found out about this and rejected this ambassador. He had to go back to London, although I think he might
now I recall that, yes.
Yeah, I think he may be teaching now at Harvard, of course. But at any rate, it seems I get extremely resentful as an American about these arrogant Brits talking about how they finally have captured the president or whatever he's saying.
Well, I think they correctly assess the situation of how to manipulate Trump. But Boris Johnson is, I said, even though we both share the same last name, my God, I'm thankful that I'm not related to him. But he's really a dreadful human being. Russia, in its initial start of the special military operation, its objective was to put enough pressure on Ukraine that they'd come to a negotiating table, which happened. And in fact, when I was in Moscow on the 1st of March, along with Judge Napolitano, we met with Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister. And he at that meeting, he told us, described how this peace talks in Istanbul back in March of 2018, and in March of 2022 and April of 2022, that it was the Ukrainian brought this document that Russia was willing to sign off on. Mm. So they were, at that point, Russia was willing to allow Donetsk and Luhansk to remain as part of Ukraine, but they'd have to have special rights to protect the Russian speakers. And they were working towards an agreement until Joe Biden, Lloyd Austin, and then Boris Johnson, who is the water boy, had to carry the message, went and told Zelensky, you do this, you're going to be, basically you're going to wind up dead. Because we're going to abandon you. Well, so the war continued at that point. The delusions on the part of people like Boris Johnson with respect to Putin, I grew up during the Cold War. I was born in 1955. So the height of the war, but sometimes occasionally hot, but usually cold, where we weren't actually shooting at each other. During that entire time, we at least found ways that we could talk and communicate and actually negotiate substantive arms control agreements. The conduct of Soviet leadership back then, whether we're talking Khrushchev or Leonid Brezhnev or Andropov, some of those guys really had some, they had some skeletons in their closet. But here's Putin. The only thing Putin has done is to defy the West in not willing to surrender Russia to be carved up by the West. Mm-hmm. And so this hatred of him, it's so visceral and it's so deep, and it's divorced from reality. I've gone back through the press looking year by year, starting in 1999, because Putin took over in 99, to figure out when did we suddenly get this turn of the animus in the press, and it happened. It happened in 2003, and the reason was Putin would not support our invasion of Iraq.
Wow!
When he started opposing our invasion of Iraq, that's when the whole propaganda turned against him and began demonizing him as this thug. It was, again, projection. We were blaming Putin for all the crap that we Americans were doing. And it's continued since then.
Right. Yeah, I think he was the first head of state to reach out after the attacks on 9/11.
Exactly.
And offer full collaboration. He took down their whatever automatic alert system in order to support the U.S. and not trigger further actions. He was extremely supportive.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the irony there too is he came into office on August 9th of 1999 because the second Chechen war, which was Islamic extremists in Chechnya, which was still is still part of Russia. These were Islamic radicals that were linked to the likes of what we call now ISIS. And who was funding them? Oh, that was the Central Intelligence Agency.
Oh, wow.
These were some of the same characters we'd been backing in Afghanistan against the Soviets. So now we were helping carry out this terrorist war. And yet, in spite of that, and Putin knew this, still, when America was attacked, he lined up in solidarity to support us and facilitated our entry into Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So, he was firm about one thing: fighting the Islamic extremists. That war in Russia went on for 10 years. They finally ended in 2009, and they've, now the Muslim population in Russia is quite content.
Right.
They're very good relations.
They are fighting in the military. The videos that you see, they're there. They're there. Now, back on this intelligence agency question, because one of the things that I wonder, and I'm sure many Americans, is suppose we actually can get some indictments like Brennan, Clapper, Comey, we get them out of there. Are there tiers of these criminal people in there,
Yes.
or how do we clean this thing up actually?
Well, and hopefully the investigation, if it's done properly, you always work from the bottom up. You don't try to go at the top and then work down, because you want to find the people, the actual, who were the ones actually implementing it. So Gina Haspel, for example, she's got to be subpoenaed, and the investigation needs to focus on her, because she played a critical role in coordinating the collection of intelligence against American citizens with the Brits, helping develop intelligence strategy that were used to go after the Trump campaign. And people say, well, what do you mean by that? So let's take the case of George Papadopoulos. And as the primary season wore on, and it became clearer that Trump was going to win, Papadopoulos was moving closer to the Trump organization. And I think he finally got heavily involved with them in December of 2015. Well, lo and behold, he gets a job offer out of nowhere to be a vice president at this London Center for International Law. It's an MI6 front, okay? It's not a real organization. It was set up by the intelligence unit there, but he gets to be a vice president, in oil and energy policy. So right away they're feeding his ego, making him important, and then they say, "Oh, you got to go to this conference in Rome." And then when he goes to Rome, he's introduced to a guy named Joseph Massoud, who is a Maltese diplomat. Well, he's another intelligence asset. He's got a history with both the CIA and MI6. So that Haspel was helping coordinate stuff like that. You got the lower levels: Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. There are a whole variety of people, and this thing is really it's dirty. In fact, we just found out yesterday. Guess who also was an FBI informant? Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, so multiple agencies.
Well, they got a document.
Wow.
Going back into the early 2000s. So and then you get to the case of like Seth Rich,
right?
Where you've got Rich is supposedly murdered in what's just a normal urban city late night robbery attempt. Nothing is stolen from him, but he's shot and he dies. Why then is the FBI counterintelligence section at headquarters getting regular briefings and updates and is involved in the investigation of that murder? Peter, I've seen the documents coming out of the Washington field office reporting back to one Peter Strzok.
Wow.
Why is the FBI involved in a domestic murder, a counterintelligence? Right. And I know the answer to that, because Pakistan was involved with this. In Pakistan's intelligence organization. So, it is. Like I said, this thing goes. It's global.
Well, so how on earth do we clean this thing up? Because it's really terrible, and are elected officials free to? I will tell you one thing I've been looking at. I just interviewed Vanessa Beeley, and she talks about the Brookings Institute Path to Persia, where there's a chapter written in 2009, and there's a section of it called "Leave It to Bibi." Right? Yeah, leave it to Bibi. Yeah. And she just makes the point. You can say Israel, but clearly Bibi is their man, right, for the policy. Right. Similarly, you may have seen, I love to keep bringing up this London Economist editorial from March 17th, 2007, called "The European Union at 100, where they talk about President Barack Obama. There hasn't even been a primary yet. President Barack Obama threatening President Putin of Russia, to get out of Ukraine by threatening the use of nuclear weapons. And this is a British script from 2007. So then you come to the US and you say, oh, is there, you think there's election fraud?
Yeah.
Well, gee, how is it that they know that these people exactly are going to be in place to do these things?
Yeah. Well, one of my classmates, when I went into the career trainee program at CIA, I had 53 other colleagues, and one of them was a good friend on the ops side. Around 2006, he was named to be head of what was called the Iran Task Force. And the plan at that time was to create a pretext for going to war with Iran. And so he's there and he's now in charge of this. And so he starts asking the questions. Guys, okay, we'll topple the regime. And he'd say, okay, then what? And the answer was just like Iraq. Oh, don't worry about it. It'll work out. And he went, okay. He got out of the job. He resigned from the position. He didn't want to have any part of it.
Wow.
But my point is, this kind of planning and thinking was underway. And then one of the ways they help push these things forward is using propaganda or information operations, where information gets put into social media or into the press, into magazines, into newspapers, and the story starts building up so that everybody says, oh yeah. In fact, I saw firsthand I played an unfortunate role in one of those messaging. I got a call in the summer of 2007 from Sid Blumenthal, the father of Max Blumenthal.
Right.
Sid was very close with the Clintons. And he goes, hey, we just got some information that there's a videotape of Michelle Obama using the word whitey. And it's out there. So why don't you check in and see what you could find? So I said, oh, okay. So I call up Cy Hirsch. I go, hey, Cy, this is what I'm hearing. He goes, hey, I've heard that too. And I didn't connect at the time that he'd actually heard it from the same person. Okay. And then I called another former CIA colleague. He said, yeah, no, I've heard that too. So I took that and said, man, we got multiple sources. No, we didn't.
Oh, wow.
We had one source that was feeding it.
Right.
And then to compound it, the Obama campaign came out and denied, oh, no, that's a lie. Because she didn't say whitey. She said, why did he? And I'm going, oh, so she did say it.
Right.
But it turned out it was a complete fabrication, because finally after 3 weeks of this and nothing was showing up, I finally went back to Blumenthal. I said, hey, Sid, I need to talk to your source who gave you this information.
Right.
David Brock, Media Matters.
Oh, no.
So I got played in that. But I saw how once you put the story out, you can go back and look at the media. There were people on air talking about this, pundits. Yes. Oh, no, this is real. It was complete fabrication, but it became a thing. It went viral. So that's why I'm saying we come back to these attitudes about war, about the threat from Iran, the threat from Russia, the threat from China. It's all a media narrative that's being fed by intelligence agencies that are lying.
Right. That's why I think it's actually very important what the mission of your nation is. Because I think if you have a specific mission for the good, for example, for cooperation, for economic development, emphatically to address the horrific economic situation the American people are facing right now, then the people who oppose that will in effect be exposed in broad relief. That is, if you're moving forward, if there's a trajectory, then the ones who aren't with the program, they're going to be really easy to spot. If you're sitting in sort of a morass of nothingness with no clue and just, letting things happen, quote unquote, then that creates enormous space for the people with the most money, the most power to have. It's like a playground. They get to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And frankly, you can't. It's a night in which all cows are black. How do you tell the difference between one kind of corruption and the other? And this struck me very much again also as a candidate, because people like to blame the politicians. They are so corrupt. They are corrupt. But you know what? You're corrupt. People sell out for the smallest little thing. It never ceases to amaze me. So you, in effect, ended up with a government that you deserve because you decided to sell out on this little thing. And you may think it's not relevant, but it's actually become the code by which the entire society operates.
Yeah. What's your problem? I'm laughing. Ham sandwich and grape knee high. And you go, what's that? So during part of the CIA training, we had training as being taken hostage and being interrogated. And they really did. They did capture us one night. They didn't strip us naked. We were supposed to wear ill-fitting, loose clothing. We had to figure out how to keep our pants up. You could get stuffed into punishment boxes. And I mean, some of the stuff that was actually used against the members of Al-Qaeda or the believed terrorists, they put you in a probably about a 3-foot high box with rocks on the floor. So you had to lay on rocks. Anyway, as part of this, you were trying to protect your cover. And one of my female classmates, so we had men and women. They were separated into different rooms. She got interrogated, and she gave up all the information about me because she was hungry, and they gave her a ham sandwich and a grape knee high. Now, I did take pleasure later when I heard her throwing up. But the point was, we knew that this was an exercise, but yet under the stress and everything, people actually started cracking. And she, as you said, they'll give up their soul for nothing, or you can be bought. You're provided. Hey, here's some finance. Here's some cash, and you'll say, okay, I'll support the most immoral, evil activity.
Right. Yeah. Well, so this all has to change. So I think we're about at time. I just want to show the cover of the white paper that we are now circulating. Worse than treason, the actual motive behind Russiagate, which we intend to get out thousands of these everywhere. And it has a timeline based in large part on what Tulsi Gabbard has released so far, but with a few additional points on Brennan and Robert Hannigan meeting and those kind of elements. And also the British war drive, because I think this cannot be allowed to become a partisan issue. It is not partisan.
Exactly.
It's strategic. And we are like this close to an irreversible situation with Russia if we don't get this thing straightened out. My intention as getting this thing out is that we have to judo that if this Russiagate investigation can judo the war drive, then it will have served its purpose. But please go ahead with whatever closing thoughts you have on this.
Well, the evil of Russiagate was that it was entirely designed to sabotage any chance that the United States and Russia would actually become friends, partners, and work together. Because as long as Russia's an enemy, we've got then justification for building up $1 trillion defense industry and feeding their insatiable appetite. And instead of coming together to bring peace in Syria, which Russia went there to try to do that, here was the United States enabling terrorist organizations. So that's this Russiagate thing was very, very important from that standpoint of this was to sabotage the chances for peace.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Larry Johnson, for being with me, and let's win this fight.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate all of your good work. Thank you.
Thank you.